Okay, Travis Wayne Goodsell. I've come up with another video for my LDS Mormon Messiah series. I'm not exactly sure how I was titling the previous ones, so this is going to be titled differently. But this is a supplement that will be added to it. I made a discovery today with the Senate impeachment trial being extended for the final vote until Wednesday at 2 p.m. As I checked and saw that the planet representing Trump is at the loins of Aquarius, which is the water bearer. In Egyptian, a priest is identified as a man with a bucket of water being poured out, just like Aquarius. And so I instantly, well, not instantly, it took me a few minutes, but I realized, wait a minute, the priests of Baal and Elijah, and Elijah's competition with the priests of Baal. This is a type and shadow symbol of the last days battle. Thus, the story of Elijah is a prophecy of the last days Messiah. Passover, for example, is understood as coming in the latter days. That's why the Jews set out a place setting for him at their tables during the Passover meals to remember that he is coming, and they open the east door so that he will rise from the east, it goes to the Moses who battled the priests of Pharaoh for the establishment of the throne. So the whole Egyptian theme of Horus battling Set to restore the throne of Osiris, who was murdered by Set and who usurped Jacob the throne. And so what I recognized was the Bible stories also referring to signs in the heavens for the latter days. We have Joel, who is also quoted by the Jesus character in Matthew 24, and also repeated by John's revelation of the sun darkening and the moon turning to blood. These are signs for the latter days. And as I've mentioned, they come from Horus with the two eyes of his, the right eye being the sun and representing government, the left eye being religion and being representing the moon. And so darkening of the eyes is darkening of the sun and the moon eclipses. John includes other signs in the heavens that give us a timeline, as I mentioned. And so the sign of the dragon was on 17th of December 2017, which was the 5th dark day of Hanukkah, the festival of lights, that comes from the book of Maccabees, where the Jews took back the temple from the Greeks and lit the menorah in the temple with a little bit of oil that lasted for 8 days. And And then his woman giving birth sign. I told you Mormons about that one as well, occurring on the women's session of General Conference for the first time, as the primary president was put in April conference as the Relief Society president, the virgin becoming the woman, and you become a woman by giving birth. And so those signs also, but there are also other signs that are told in story form that are not immediately recognizable as signs in the heaven for the latter days. And the priests of Baal gives us one such sign in the heaven of the latter days, because we already identify the Elijah story as apocalyptic literature because it refers to a type and symbol of the latter days, a prophecy for the latter days. Therefore, it's no wonder that there's a sign in the heaven to look for this fulfillment. And sure enough, I put it in the initial pictures that I already have up on my movie maker. I show the first one, which is the sun darkening on the 21st of August 2017. That is the beginning, and I went over how that's also the first, the new year of the Egyptian religious calendar. And so, because of its rarity of having a total solar eclipse on the new year, which varies day to day in that calendar, because it's not 365 days with a leap year as we have this year for 2020. It was a 360-day calendar, a lunar calendar, thus the religious calendar. And so for it to occur in our day, it never happened previously, it never will happen again. So for the ancient Egyptians to know of the date of this, and to know which landmass it was going to occur, because they're in Egypt, they're in the Middle East, they're not in America, and yet they knew exactly where and when it was going to occur. And I don't understand it, but thus it is. And I can confirm as I identify which planets correspond with the characters of the story in the Bible narratives, as well as who the modern day representations are. And so the darkening of both eyes means that both the government and the religion have to collapse. Anciently, for the Egyptians, they were united into a theocracy. The pharaohs were both the king of kings and the great high priest. Thus, they were Melchizedek. And our day, they are separated, government and religion. And so, knowing that it is over America, we now know the government has to do with the king over America, and the religious part has to do with the religion of America. And so we can exclude Catholics because their kingdom is in Italy at the Vatican. And so we would need to have a kingdom here in America for the religion. Brigham Young fits the bill, as he usurped Joseph Smith's organization after his murder. Again, Joseph Smith thought he was going to be Horus, but then was murdered as Osiris, as his organization was usurped. It was usurped by many different people, many different groups, but Brigham Young has turned out to be the biggest one, and Brigham Young is the only one that turned his split off into an actual kingdom, the Kingdom of Deseret, here in the Salt Lake Valley, which was actually a bigger area. And so that's what we were looking for, is the identification. Having been born and raised Mormon, going on 50 years, it was easy to make the identification for the religion. And for the president, yeah, we just had Trump put in back in January. So it was obvious that he also is the government leader involved in the collapse of America. And so they're awful small unless you're watching on a big screen TV, but at the mouth of Leo the lion is Mars. So there's one of the two characters, either the government leader or the religious leader. I originally thought that it would be the government leader, Trump, because of the character personification of Mars, who was the war god. Trump is the commander-in-chief over military actions. So that's what I first assumed. I was wrong as I followed these characters. Actually, I was following before this event, so I already identified the religious leader, Russell M. Nelson, with Mars. And as this event occurred and other events where Mars continues through other constellations, thus telling different stories, I saw the fulfillment and confirmed that yes, it's Nelson, all right. I don't know how it works. It's working. And Trump is on the other side of the total solar eclipse, and Mercury is the messenger deity for the gods and uses his trump to give the messages. So that's how I identified Trump as Mercury, as I watched him go through the constellations as well, telling the stories. And so the next picture I have is what's going to happen on Wednesday when the final vote in the Senate will take place. Trump, who is Mercury, will be right there at the loins of Aquarius, which is the water bearer who is dumping out his water. And so to have Mercury at the loins where humans take a piss, as that's when it all of a sudden hit me, Elijah and the priests of Baal. It is not translated correctly from the Hebrew into our English. So you will not find Elijah mocking the priests of Baal as they're trying to get their fire started on the altar from the fire from heaven. And Elijah mocks them by saying, "Is your God taking a piss? Is that why he's not here to light your fire?" And just hilarious. as Elijah just mocks the priests of Baal in this competition. And that's where it all of a sudden hit me. Oh, priests of Baal, priest, Egyptian, Aquarius, water bearer, pouring out the water, the Egyptian sign for priest. And them trying to get the fire lit as Elijah pours water onto the altar and is able to light the fire regardless. And Elijah saying, "Is your God taking a piss?" refers to the sign in the heavens to look for. That of Trump, the government leader, at the loins in Aquarius. And that's the day that has been designated this very day for the final vote for the impeachment. And at 2 p.m. And I don't know how it works, but it works. Then the next one, because we're also watching Nelson, we need to watch and see what he does. And on next Friday, a week from today, Nelson will be in conjunction with the star in Ophiuchus, his knee. Ophiuchus is the god who's battling the constellation serpents. Again, God battling the serpent. Again, comes from Horus battling Set in the latter days, and the Horus being the rightful heir to the throne of his father Osiris. He is supposed to be the ruler of the world, as John calls him the man-child or male child, properly translated. And so for planets to join with that star, which is at the knee of Ophiuchus, that is bowing the knee to God. Every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus, book of Jesus, after the 5 books of Moses, book of Joshua, he's the Horus Messiah. And that Jesus is the anointed one. Horus is the anointed one. And Mars is going to be there next Friday. And so we're going to need to watch to find out how it's going to happen for Nelson to bow the knee to the true Moses of the church. Section 130 talks about Moses in the latter days shall lead the people, just as Moses of old led the house of Israel. And that will be to restore Zion, restore the kingdom, thus Horus. And other passage in the Doctrine and Covenants refers to that role of a Moses type as the president of the church. Thus, we're looking for someone who restores the kingdom of the church from Nelson, as Nelson is the usurping king, Jacob. And the Book of Mormon also symbolizes this as well. And so, more information about the knee. When Trump, as Mercury, got to that point, that was the day of his impeachment. And so that's the type of thing we're looking for with Nelson, is some kind of condemnation that takes away his authority. Trump's authority was damaged with the impeachment, as he had to bow the knee to lose his authority. And so Nelson also will lose authority next Friday. I don't know how it works. It just works. We'll see what it'll be. There are a number of lawsuits that are going up against the church. Again, the battle of Elijah versus the priests of Baal are legal disputes. The right to claim authority. And the church is under question for their authority. Nelson's kids, Richard and Dina, don't know if I remember the wife's name, Nelson's daughter's name, but Miles. They had a lawsuit the week before General Conference in October 2018, when Nelson took over in the April Conference. And then last year in August 2nd, the judges ruled that it will be sent off to the Supreme Court to determine if Nelson can be deposed in that case. And so it's put on hold, and the Supreme Court has yet to rule on that in Utah. But the Monday after that Friday, on the 5th of August, Gaddy versus the church was submitted. And then Judge First allowed the case to proceed. She then got fired, as the Utah Mormon judges protected and defended the church by punishing Judge First for allowing the case to proceed and not dismissing it or causing a permanent delay, as the replacement judge has done. And so that one's been delayed, and it could take years. However, there was someone else who filed on September 30th. And his case has been ruled, just not officially. He won. And his case won because he followed the rules when the judges did not follow the rules. And thus, by not following the rules, he wins, as he's filed a motion for summary judgment, which at midnight tonight will be the deadline. And still no word from the judge to respond. And therefore he will go in on Monday and follow the federal rules as to what to do next, and have that done Monday. So that might be it. We'll have to wait and see. Again, Trump will be acquitted, take a piss on America, on Wednesday. He's guaranteed to retaliate. He's already planned to implement a number of his wish list on Monday. Travel ban expansion, canceling Social Security, and other items he's been wanting to get to. He says he's going to do at least the travel ban expansion on Monday. And so he's also been wanting to lock up all of his opponents, the Democrats, and traitors to the GOP, traitors to Trump. And once he's acquitted, he's going to be unstoppable. And Romney voted yes today. Lee voted no. And that's discouraging, because you Mormons know about Joseph Smith's prophecy of the Constitution hanging by a thread. And then you have Benson, who gave his talk at a BYU devotional, which then was given at a conference, where he took out what he said at the BYU devotional, which was the Constitution will not be saved in Washington. So if it's not going to be saved in Washington, the latter-day Mormon Moses, the Messiah, will not be president. He will restore the ancient order as the King of Kings and the High Priest of the church as well. And so America will be destroyed. And in the midst of America will rise up the New Jerusalem, the Zion, the kingdom of God. Because the government's been destroyed. A new government needs to be created. And so maybe it'll be through taking over the church. We'll have to wait and see. But the videos point out what he is to do and how to recognize him. And so you have to do your research. And history, as I've mentioned, will identify him. You need to come unto Christ and support his cause, but history will make that determination, just as history determined that Joseph Smith was not the latter-day Messiah. And the latter-day Messiah is supposed to succeed and restore the kingdom and the religion. And so this is nigh at hand, like a thief in the night, as the astrological or the astronomy charts indicate to us. Is there more to tell on this one? No, I don't think so. It's just to cover Elijah and the priests of Baal, and so I needed to give you background on how that worked. And so, yes, Jupiter is the male child that John was referring to, because he is in each constellation for a period of a pregnancy. Sometimes an extended pregnancy, but that's to be expected for the firstborn birthright child, isn't it? Yeah, get your stellarium, stellarium.org. You got to have a newer model computer. You can't have an Windows X or any of those older ones. Windows 10 isn't required. And then they have two versions, a smaller file size and a larger file size. But if you have a terabyte system, you can easily get the larger size, and it works beautifully. But remember .org. So, okay. That is that, and this is the other. One more thing I forgot to mention is you're probably going, well, what about the Messiah, Jupiter? What happened when he got to the knee of Ophiuchus? Did he have to give up authority? No. The difference between him and the government leader Mercury and the religious leader Mars is that Jupiter, when he got to that position, was accompanied by the Sun. Thus, the true King of Kings and great high priest, had the shield with him, that all bowed to him, rather than as both the government leader and the religious leader were unprotected, and thus gave up authority as they knelt to the King of Kings and the great high priest. So that's the additional information in case you were wondering.